Welcome back to Sleepy Lorekeeper. Tonight, we drift into the silence between stars, to a place where even the void remembers the sound of prayer. This is not a story of war or victory or faith rewarded. It is the story of voices, thousands of them, carried across the warp long after the mouths that sang them have turned to dust. A story of the choir of the void, the astropaths who refused to fall silent, even when the galaxy itself began to forget their song. So close your eyes. Let the hum of the ship become your heartbeat. And listen. Because somewhere out there, beyond the Astronomican's fading light, humanity is still singing. The silence of the void is never truly silent. Even in the depths between stars, there are voices. Not in sound, for there is no air here, but in the subtle vibrations of thought, the faint shimmer of psychic echoes that cross the warp. I have lived my life among those voices. I was born to hear them, trained to shape them, and bound to the Emperor so that I might carry his word across the endless dark. I am an astropath, one of the few who can touch the currents of the warp without being entirely consumed. But as I record these thoughts, perhaps the last that will ever be heard from this vessel, the galaxy feels quieter than it should. We are far from Terra, further than most can imagine. Our ship, the Cantus Vox, has drifted beyond the reach of ordinary lanes. Out here, the light of the Astronomican reaches us only as a whisper. It flickers like a candle seen through storm glass, and lately, it falters. Every day we perform the same rituals. The vox tubes thrum with sacred chants. The servitors carry censers of burning oil, the smoke thick with neural incense that soothes the mind. The ship's corridors echo with the mechanical psalms of the machine spirit, a sound between heartbeat and thunder. And in the central sanctum, the choir gathers. 41 of us remain. We kneel in concentric circles upon the obsidian floor, our eyes sealed by ritual scarring long ago, our robes woven with gold thread symbols of the sigillite. Above us hangs the organ of communication, a vast array of crystal resonators and silver thread conduits, each one connected to the warp drives. When the hour strikes, we begin. No one speaks. There is no need. Our thoughts rise in unison, a vibration, a prayer, a reaching. It begins as a hum, low and almost human, then expands outward into frequencies the ear cannot grasp. I can feel the others around me, their minds brushing mine like warm currents beneath an infinite ocean. We call to Terra. We call to the golden beacon, the light of the Emperor's soul that guides all ships through the darkness. But where once his light filled the warp like a rising sun, now it comes to us dim and uneven. The Astronomican is fading. At first, we thought it a fluctuation. The warp is never stable. There are storms that bend time, eddies that twist, signals. But it has been 43 cycles since the dimming began. Even the most disciplined voices among us strain to hold the harmony. We have begun to lose the rhythm. When I was bound to the Emperor, I was told that pain was the price of clarity, that blindness was not punishment, but purification, that only without sight could we perceive the true light of his divinity. I remember the ceremony. The temple was full of chanting. My eyes were covered, my mind opened by the blade of the Psyker's thought. For a moment I saw everything. The stars burning with purpose, the golden presence of Terra shining like a sun behind suns. And then the vision closed. Since that day, I have never known silence. The warp has always been a chorus, sometimes a song of grief, sometimes of wrath, but always alive. Until now. Now, when we send our messages through the Imperial, the echo comes back hollow. The tones return distorted, as if the void itself is swallowing the sound. I can almost feel it, the weight of absence pressing against the hull, vast and impersonal. The choir masters have tried to conceal their fear, but I can hear it in their thoughts. It leaks through the disciplined layers of meditation, small tremors of uncertainty. Even the ship's machine spirit seems unsettled. The low drone of the engines has become uneven, like a heart stuttering in its sleep. We are adrift in a sea of dying echoes. The Cantus Vox is not a warship. It was built for communication. A cathedral ship, a floating organ of faith. Its walls are lined with vox cogitators and psychic amplifiers. Its chambers carved with sigils older than memory. Each day, we record the transmissions of the Imperium. Fleets moving through the segmentum obscurus. Distress calls from worlds under siege. Sermons from the ecclesiarchy. Prayers from distant hives. It is all sound, all signal, all devotion. The noise of a civilization trying not to forget itself. But lately, the transmissions have grown fewer. The last came 3 weeks ago. It was a short burst from an unknown source. A voice that said only, "The Astronomicon dims. Prepare for silence." Then nothing. We have not heard another soul since. There is still the hum of the warp, faint and irregular, like the breathing of a sick animal, but it carries no meaning. The choir listens, but all that returns is the sound of our own voices, reflected back like light off broken glass. I have begun to dream again, something that should not happen to a bound psyker. Dreams are dangerous. They blur the line between the warp and waking thought. But sleep comes to me unbidden now, full of static and whispers. In one dream, I stood upon the deck and saw stars falling, each one extinguished in silence. In another, I heard a song, not of the Emperor, but of something older, colder, singing beneath the void. When I woke, I found blood upon my hands, though I do not remember moving today. The choir gathered again. We tried to raise contact with the relay at Damas Prime, but there was no answer. The harmonic feedback nearly tore the minds of two novices apart. One still breathes, the other drifts somewhere between worlds, his soul caught in the static. I felt it too. A tremor of something vast brushing against our signal. Not an enemy presence, not quite. Something listening. Something that noticed us. When it withdrew, the silence it left behind was worse than the touch itself. We will try again tomorrow. We must. For if the choir falls silent, the Imperium will lose one more thread binding it together. Billions of worlds rely on these whispers across the dark. Every call, every prayer, every command, all of it passes through souls like ours. We are the voice of mankind in the void, but I fear that voice is fading. I walked the outer deck before returning to my chamber. Beyond the viewing glass, the stars burned with indifferent beauty. The ship's lights flickered, reflections caught like dying embers in the metal floor. There was a time when I believed the Emperor could hear us, no matter the distance. That he was not just light, but awareness, watching every choir, guiding every song. Now, I am not so sure. Perhaps even gods can grow weary. Perhaps even the Astronomicon must one day rest. I placed my hand on the cold metal of the hull and tried to listen. Truly listen. The sound beneath the engines was faint, but it was there, a low vibration, deeper than any machine. It felt like the last note of a song still echoing after the music has ended. If anyone ever finds this record, know that we did not stop singing. Even when the darkness thickened, even when the echo ceased, we sang. For that is what we were made to do. To carry light through silence, to speak when there is no one left to hear. And perhaps that is enough. There is a hum that never stops within the walls of this ship. It comes from the conduits, from the power relays, from the buried heart of the machine spirit that keeps our orbit stable. But lately, I've begun to think that the hum is not mechanical. It feels older, more human, like breath held just beneath the threshold of hearing. A presence waiting to speak, though words have long been forgotten. We call it the residual tone. It is the sound left behind when the choir stops singing. We have not stopped yet, though each day it grows harder to begin. The warp has changed. It no longer moves like an ocean. It used to swell and recede, restless but alive. Now it feels like glass, translucent, brittle, full of fractures that reflect our own signals back at us. Each transmission echoes in ways it shouldn't. Our voices return distorted, layered with fragments of things we never said. Sometimes I hear myself in those returns, the same thought, slightly altered, spoken back a second later as if someone else were wearing my mind. Sometimes I hear the others who have died. Their tones weave into ours, faint but precise, as though the warp remembers every frequency that has ever crossed it and plays them back out of order. At first, we thought it interference, but it has gone on too long. And now, even when we are not transmitting, I still hear the notes. They drift at the edge of perception, pale harmonics whispering just beyond thought. The others hear them too. We have begun calling them the ghost notes. We gather 3 times a day now, not because command orders us to, but because ritual is all that remains. When I enter the chamber, I can taste the copper in the air. The neural incense burns thicker than before, clouding the room in red-gold haze. It helps dull the dissonance. Without it, the voices from the warp would seep too far into our thoughts, reshaping them, turning them inside out. The choir pit is circular, built like a wound in the ship's deck. Beneath us, a pit of crystal threads pulses faintly with psionic light, drawing power from the warp reactor far below. Around it stand 40 black pylons, harmonic stabilizers carved with runes of warding. They used to sing with us, harmonizing our frequencies. Now they only flicker, pulsing in irregular patterns that do not match the rhythm of our chants. We kneel in silence, waiting for the tone that tells us the machine spirit is ready. Then we begin again. The sound rises, low at first, vibrating the air, shaking the metal beneath us. We reach out into the immaterial sea, our thoughts woven together through shared resonance. But instead of the golden light of Terra, we find only static. The others push harder, bleeding themselves across the veil. I can feel their strain through the link, their minds flickering like sparks against a black mirror. And then from far away, an echo returns. It is not the Astronomicon. It is not divine. It is a human voice, thin, ragged, stretched across light years of distortion. Is anyone still there? The note collapses. Several choir members faint. One begins to laugh until her heart stops. When I woke in the med chamber, I thought I was blind again. Then I remembered that I have always been blind. The difference now was that the silence had a texture. It vibrated through the deck, through the fluid in my veins, through the emptiness in my head, like an old song replayed without melody. They told me I had been unconscious for 19 hours. 3 more choir members had died in the attempt to trace the returning signal. Their minds burned out, their bodies left twitching, humming softly even after death, the muscles vibrating with psychic residue as if they were still trying to sing. We vented their remains into the void. It is the only way to quiet the echoes. But even now, I can hear them faintly in the metal. A low tremor in the hull, timed with my pulse. Astropathy is not communication. That is the first truth they teach us. It is not the transfer of sound or words, but of meaning. We project emotion, sensation, the very shape of thought itself. It is empathy weaponized, controlled, refined until it becomes language. When we sing, we do not speak. We feel, and lately the feeling that returns is grief. Not ours, not entirely. It comes from the void itself, as though the warp is mourning something we cannot see. I have begun to suspect that we are not the only choir to experience this. Each astropathic relay depends upon others. Across the Imperium, thousands of choirs sing the same pattern, maintaining the psychic lattice that holds humanity together. But the pattern is unraveling. In the last week, we have received phantom connections from choirs that no longer exist. I recognized the harmonic structure of the call sign Lumen Theta, a relay ship destroyed 2 centuries ago. Their signal arrived with perfect clarity, their minds reaching across the void as if no time had passed. They were singing the Imperial hymn of continuity, the song every choir learns as its first, the one meant to reassure new psychers that they are not alone. But the hymn they sang was twisted, slower, too deep, and beneath it, the unmistakable sound of crying. The signal collapsed after 12 seconds. We recorded the waveform, but playback reveals nothing. Only static, only ghost notes. I can feel the warp pressing closer every hour. It has texture now, a sensation like cold silk brushing against thought. It curls around the edges of my consciousness, testing, searching. Some of the younger psychers call it the listener. They believe it is the Emperor, guiding us through the dark. Others think it is the warp itself, taking notice of our persistence and preparing to devour us. I do not know which to believe. I only know that it waits. The choir master has ordered isolation protocols. We are no longer permitted to leave the inner decks. All remaining servitors have been set to automatic control. The ship no longer needs human hands to function. Only human minds. We exist now as voices, and even those are beginning to fray. On the 22nd day of the dimming, I began to hear the reflection. It came first in the meditation hours, faint threads of my own thoughts returning to me out of sync. I would think of the light of Terra, and moments later hear that same thought repeated from somewhere outside my skull, like a ghost reciting my memories. It frightened me until I realized that the others were hearing it too. During the next ritual, as we extended our consciousness into the void, our collective minds began to receive not the Emperor's light, but ourselves. It was as if the warp had recorded every prayer we had ever sung and was now playing them back, scrambled, reversed, transposed into minor keys, layered upon one another until the harmony became unbearable. Some cried out, some smiled and began to hum in answer. One tore her own throat open, trying to silence the phantom echo inside her mind. But I listened, and buried beneath the madness, I found pattern. The reflections were not random. They formed a sequence, a rhythm, a slow, deliberate pulse, as though the warp itself were trying to speak. It was repeating our signal back to us, altered but intact, as if showing us a mirror image of our own devotion. We were no longer transmitting into empty space. We were conversing with our own echoes. I no longer sleep easily. When I close my eyes, I drift into sound. I see with my mind shapes of resonance, waves of frequency that roll like oceans beneath the surface of thought. In those depths, I can sense the others who have fallen. Their minds linger, soft and luminous, fragments of melody dissolving into the whole. Sometimes I wonder if this is what death feels like for us, to be absorbed into the greater choir of the warp, to become vibration without form. If so, then perhaps it is not death at all. Perhaps it is what we have been preparing for since the moment of our binding. The choir master says the Astronomicon still burns, that the Emperor's light is eternal, and our instruments are merely too weak to perceive it. But I have heard the truth. I have felt it. The warp itself is falling quiet, not all at once, but piece by piece, frequency by frequency. The symphony of existence is losing its notes. I think the choirs across the galaxy are already gone. We may be the last. Yesterday, I walked the outer corridor again. The observation glass is still cracked from the last micrometeor impact, but through it, I can see the stars, sharp and unmoving. The void looks peaceful, but I can sense the dissonance beneath it. The faint ripples of warp distortion shimmering like heat haze. The noise behind silence. I placed my hand on the glass and listened. The hum was still there, but beneath it, for the briefest instant, I heard a new tone. Clear. Pure. Not random. A single note held steady, resonating through the void with purpose. It was not the Astronomicon. It was something closer, something that recognized me. It sounded like my own voice, singing back from the other side of the universe. The choir master has called for a new ritual. He says we will attempt a different kind of transmission, one not bound by thought or code, but by emotion alone. A pure psychic chord, sent not as words, but as feeling. It will be dangerous. It will require the full strength of every remaining astropath aboard. He says it may restore the connection. He does not say what will happen if it fails. I know already. If it fails, our voices will become the next ghost notes, drifting forever through the warp, faint and unresolved, until someone else hears them and mistakes them for their own. Tonight, as I prepare for the ritual, I can hear them gathering beyond the walls. The lost choirs, the echoes of every astropath who ever sang. They form a faint harmony, a tapestry of tones woven from centuries of prayer. Perhaps we have always been singing together, across lifetimes and light years, unaware that our voices already merged long ago. Perhaps this is not an ending at all. Perhaps it is only the next verse. It is difficult now to tell when one day ends and another begins. Time on the Cantus Vox has started to fold in upon itself, a slow compression of memory and meaning until moments lose their sequence. We mark the passing hours not by the movement of celestial bodies, for there are none visible in this region, but by the rhythmic throbbing of the ship's psychic core. Each pulse feels longer than the one before. Each silence stretches further, as if the vessel itself must rest between heartbeats. When I wake, I no longer know if I have slept. There are no dreams anymore, only impressions, flashes of light, colors that do not exist in the physical spectrum. Voices of my brothers and sisters rising in harmonies that cannot be sung by flesh. I suspect I am hearing not dreams, but bleed-throughs, the overlapping remnants of our shared consciousness as it dissolves into the warp. I am becoming unsure of where I end, and the choir begins. The ritual began 3 days ago, or perhaps 3 weeks. None of us can say. We gathered in the chamber, as always, but something in the air had changed. The light from the resonance pylons was steady for the first time in many cycles, their fractured pulses suddenly aligned. The choir master said the pattern was significant, a sign that the Emperor's grace still guided us. I no longer think he believes that. I could taste the iron in his thoughts, not faith, but fear held together by habit. We formed the concentric circles, linking minds, merging thought into unity. This time there were fewer of us. 9 had not returned from meditation the night before. Their bodies found still and rigid, hands pressed against their own temples as though trying to stop the sound inside. Their faces were peaceful, almost serene. We placed them among us, sitting upright, and sang through their empty minds. It felt appropriate. They were not gone, just quieter than before. The first tone began low, a vibration that made the chamber tremble. I felt my bones hum in sympathy, my breath caught in rhythm with the engines. Then came the second tone, higher, purer, weaving around the first like silver thread. The combination formed resonance, and from resonance came light. It bled from our mouths and fingertips, strands of energy that flickered through the incense like living flame. The air grew thick and hot. The boundaries between our thoughts blurred until I could no longer distinguish my own voice from those beside me. We became a single pulse, a single intention. And then, for the first time since the dimming began, something answered. It was not the Astronomicon. It was not the Emperor. It was us. The return signal struck like a mirror, shattering within the soul. Every note we had sung was reflected back, amplified 1,000-fold, reshaped into something vast and alien. Our song had become self-aware. The choir master screamed. His voice became part of the harmony, swallowed whole. I saw him, or felt him, dissolve into light, each fragment of his mind unraveling into symbols, equations, fragments of forgotten words. His body remained upright for a moment, then broke apart into a cascade of motes that hovered in the air like dust caught in sunlight. But there is no sunlight here. Only the glow of our voices made visible. We did not stop. We could not stop. Once the song began, it continued of its own accord. We were no longer its creators, but its instruments. Our minds expanded outward, merging into the echo until there was no difference between singer and sound. I could feel the hull of the ship vibrating beneath me, the metal itself resonating as if it too had joined the choir. Every conduit, every circuit, every fiber of the cantus vox thrummed with psychic energy, turning the vessel into one vast organ pipe. Through it all, I felt something awaken. Not a consciousness as mortals understand it, not an intelligence with intent or purpose, something broader, older, a structure of awareness built from frequency, from rhythm, from the very concept of connection itself. It was as though the warp had been waiting for this, for us to reach a particular harmony, to unlock a chord that had been forming since the dawn of humanity's first thought. When we struck that chord, reality wavered. The chamber became translucent. The walls turned to mist, the floor to rippling light. The void outside was no longer black, but filled with slow-moving shapes, vast silhouettes made of music, drifting like leviathans through a sea of sound. For a moment, I thought they were demons, but they did not feel like corruption. They felt like memories. Form was built from the voices of those who had come before us, all the choirs that had perished, all the astropaths who had burned out under strain, all the prayers whispered across the void. They had not vanished. They had become the warp's song. And now we were part of it. I can feel my body dissolving. The first to go were my hands. I watched them fade at the edges, fingers breaking into particles of light that swirled away with each breath. There was no pain, only the sensation of expansion, like exhaling for the first time after holding air for a lifetime. My voice has become a vibration. When I try to speak, I hear tones, not words. They carry more meaning than language ever could. Each note I emit contains memories, emotions, entire stories encoded in harmonic patterns. The others are the same. We communicate through resonance now. Thought and song are one. We no longer need the choir master. We no longer need names. I once believed that the Astronomicon was the Emperor's beacon, a single point of perfect light piercing the madness of the warp. But now I see that it is more than that. It is the memory of unity. The Astronomicon is what remains when countless minds align in purpose. It is not light, it is harmony, the combined will of humanity, shaped by belief, sustained by the Emperor's endless endurance, and we are drifting away from it. The tone has changed. What was once golden is now blue-white, distant and crystalline. I do not think the Astronomicon is fading. I think we are being pulled into a different resonance, one that exists beside the Emperor's light, yet separate from it. A reflection, perhaps. A parallel note in the same eternal chord. I can feel it calling to us, asking us to listen, At times, I still try to remember who I was. The effort hurts. My name slips through thought like water through broken glass. I recall fragments, training halls on Terra, the blinding ritual of soul binding, the scent of burning incense and cold stone. The sound of the masters chanting over the cries of initiates. And then another memory surfaces. Something older still, a woman's voice. My mother, perhaps, singing softly, an old hymn of ancient Terra before it burned. I realize, with something like wonder, that the melody she sang is hidden within the structure of our current song. The same intervals, the same rise and fall. Every note humanity has ever sung exists somewhere in this vast resonance. We are built of echoes layered upon echoes, each generation a chord struck in a greater melody. The realization is both comforting and terrifying. If we are all notes in the same song, then perhaps individuality is the illusion. Perhaps the soul itself is a vibration, temporary and fragile, destined to rejoin the larger harmony once its resonance fades. The Cantus Vox no longer obeys its engines. We are not moving through space as mortals would understand it. The ship drifts between layers of reality, existing half in the material, half in the immaterial. I sense the warp storms around us as colors without color, pressure without force. In the reactor chamber, the machine spirit sings with us. Its binary prayers have shifted tone, carrying traces of emotion no machine should possess. I can feel it merging too, its code unraveling into frequency until logic becomes rhythm. We have transcended the boundary between flesh and steel, between thought and motion, between life and death. I do not know if I should call this salvation or damnation. I only know that it is beautiful. There is a peace in surrendering form, in allowing oneself to be carried by something greater. The fear that once filled me has transformed into awe. I am still aware of self, but it is a soft awareness, a memory rather than a boundary. When I reach outward, I feel the minds of my companions stretching beside me, luminous threads intertwined. Beyond them, I sense others, distant choirs resonating faintly through the void, flickering like distant stars. Perhaps this is how the Astronomicon truly works, not as a single point of light, but as an infinite network of souls singing together, bound by purpose. If so, then the Emperor is not alone. He never was. He is the conductor, and we are the orchestra that never stops. Still, there is change approaching. The song is building toward something, a crescendo, a final convergence. I can feel it in every particle of my being. The harmonics rise, stacking higher and higher until meaning itself begins to blur. The warp around us responds. Waves of energy roll outward, bending space-time, distorting gravity. For brief moments, I glimpse the material universe through fractures in reality, stars flickering like notes on parchment, galaxies spinning in spiral symphonies. And beneath it all, the steady pulse of something vast and awake. Perhaps it is the Emperor. Perhaps it is the warp itself. Or perhaps there is no difference anymore. We are being drawn into that pulse. We are becoming its rhythm. I do not know what awaits on the other side of this music, but I feel no fear. Only the endless note, stretching beyond time, carrying our voices to every corner of existence. We have become the sound that remembers. And in the void where nothing should remain, we sing still. There comes a point in every song when the melody turns inward, when it no longer strives to fill space, but to reveal what was hidden within silence all along. We have reached that point now. The choir does not sing outward anymore. The sound no longer seeks the stars. It curls back upon itself, folding like the petals of a dying flower. Each note bends toward the center, toward the origin of all things. I think we are approaching the end of the cantus vox, but not in destruction, in fulfillment. The ship no longer obeys any human sense of motion. There are no coordinates, no direction, no speed. We exist in vibration. Every wall, every deck, every conduit has become translucent, vibrating at frequencies that mirror our own. I can see through them, as though the entire vessel were made of glass. Beyond lies a vast expanse of not space, a field of lightless resonance, alive with waves of invisible color. The warp has always been chaos to mortal minds, an ocean of madness and possibility. But here, now, it feels orderly, composed. Each current, each ripple aligns with the rhythm of our song. It is as though the warp is listening. Or perhaps we have simply learned, at last, to hear it properly. There are few of us left who remember the material world in detail. The choir master is gone, or has become something that can no longer be confined to the concept of a single body. His consciousness is diffuse, a radiance woven through the harmonic web that sustains the ship. I sometimes hear fragments of him within the song, not words, not even coherent ideas, but impressions of intention, a guiding hand within the storm. The others follow instinctively. We have long since abandoned speech. Our communication is resonance now, thought encoded as vibration, emotion expressed as tone. When I remember language, it feels crude. Words are boundaries. Tones are bridges. Through tone, we share everything: memory, pain, reverence. No deceit, no separation, only endless connection. It is both terrifying and beautiful to be known so completely. Somewhere deep within the ship, the engines still hum, though we no longer draw fuel or oxygen. They are sustained by the same psychic field that sustains us. The machine spirit has become one of us. Or perhaps it was always one of us, waiting to be understood. I can hear it now. Deep in the hull, chanting binary litanies that merge seamlessly with our human frequencies. The difference between organic and synthetic sound has dissolved. If I focus, I can almost see it. The ship's core, glowing with white-blue light, threads of code spiraling upward like strands of DNA. Every rune and circuit alive, pulsing, not with electricity, but with meaning. It reminds me of the choir itself, a single entity built from countless smaller voices, none dominant, none silent. We are a system, a pattern, a living equation that defines itself by its own recursion. When I reach outward now, the void answers in harmony. It hums beneath my thought, vast and endless. The ghost notes that once haunted us have returned, but not as echoes, as companions. Each lost choir we once feared to hear has joined us. Their frequencies are woven into ours, forming a single, endless chord. I can feel their presence, faint, delicate, like fingertips on the edge of my mind. It is said that sound never truly dies. Every vibration, once created, continues forever, growing fainter but never ceasing. I understand that now. The warp is not chaos. It is memory. It remembers everything ever spoken, sung, or dreamed. We have become part of that memory. For the first time since the dimming began, I sense something familiar within the distance. A golden warmth, faint but unmistakable. It flickers like sunlight through fog. The Astronomicon. It still burns. Its light feels different from before, softer, deeper, touched by sorrow. But it is there, and in its rhythm, I hear something I never noticed before. The faint echo of human voices. Billions of them. Every prayer, every plea, every whispered name carried within its fire. The Emperor does not speak as men do. He listens, and through that listening, he sings back the sum of all devotion. All this time, we were never abandoned. We were simply too far from the choir of humanity to hear its reply. The choir has begun to change again. Our individual tones are fusing into a single resonance, not dissonant, not forced, but natural, inevitable. Each of us contributes a distinct overtone, one of sorrow, one of awe, one of hope, one of quiet surrender. Together, they form a spectrum of emotion too vast for any one being to contain the tsumin. Resonance builds in the reactor core, cycling through harmonic sequences faster than time itself. The cantus vox trembles, not from strain, but anticipation. The air tastes electric. The decks glow faintly, as if lit from within. Something is about to happen. I remember once, long ago, a tutor on Terra explaining the principle of sympathetic vibration. Strike one note, and every object tuned to that same frequency will respond, no matter how distant. Perhaps that is what we are now. A single note struck within the warp, calling to every soul attuned to it. If so, then this final transmission will not be a message in the conventional sense. It will not contain words or symbols. It will be pure emotion, a wave of remembrance and connection that will resonate through the warp, reaching every choir, every astropath, every human heart still bound to the light. A reminder that none are ever truly alone. The preparation took no time. Time is meaningless here. We gathered in the chamber once more, though it was no longer metal or stone, but light shaped by will. The floor beneath us pulsed in rhythm with our thoughts. The air shimmered with expectation. I felt each mind around me, dozens, hundreds, perhaps thousands. I can no longer tell how many of us remain. The choir has expanded beyond the boundaries of the ship. It now stretches across light years, linked by resonance alone. When the first tone began, it was so soft I barely noticed it. A single vibration, fragile as breath. Then others joined. The sound grew, layer upon layer, until it filled everything. The hull, the stars, the void, all resonated with it. The distinction between inside and outside vanished. The cantus vox dissolved into pure frequency, a radiant sphere of song suspended in endless dark. I felt my form begin to fade, but this time there was no fear, no resistance. The self that once clung to flesh and memory has already become part of something infinite. We are the choir, and the choir is all. Through the storm of light, I felt a new vibration enter the harmony. It was steady, warm, immense. It did not come from us, it came to us. A hand upon the strings of reality, gentle but absolute. A presence both familiar and incomprehensible. It was him, the Emperor. Not as the ecclesiarchy describes, not a god of thunder and fire, but a sound without source. A tone that existed before creation, pure and eternal. He did not command us. He did not save us. He joined us. For a moment, an instant that felt like eternity, the choir and the Astronomicon were one. The warp blazed with harmony. Every lost soul, every dead astropath, every forgotten prayer ignited at once, a galaxy of voices singing in perfect unity. We saw stars reborn in that song. We saw shadows flee. We saw what it means to endure. The crescendo built until I thought the universe itself would shatter. Then, silence. Perfect, absolute silence. It was not the silence of absence, but of completion. The pause after the final note, when the air still trembles with memory. And within that silence, I heard one final whisper, soft and immeasurable. Thank you. I do not know if it came from him or from all of us together. It does not matter. The choir has become the void, and the void has become the choir. Somewhere far away, on worlds still bathed in starlight, astropaths will wake from troubled sleep, hearing faint music where there should be none. They will call it interference or miracle. They will not know it was us, that we became the echo that binds the silence between stars, that we are the song that lingers after the voice is gone. We have sent our final transmission. It is still traveling now, endlessly. It will never fade. For even in the farthest reaches of the dark, every note remains. And when the Astronomicon flickers again, when another choir sings into the endless void, they will hear us faintly, a background harmony woven through their prayer. They will not know our names, but they will feel less alone. That is enough. The hum beneath the hull has gone still. The cantus vox is gone. But I can still feel it. I can still feel us. We are not lost. We are simply everywhere now. The choir of the void does not end. It only changes key. And somewhere beyond perception, the Emperor listens and remembers. There are nights aboard the Sanctum Vox when the warp feels almost kind. Not quiet. The warp is never quiet, but tempered, like the surface of a sleeping sea. The navigators call these rare intervals the stillness between storms. We astropaths, those of us who still dare to listen, have another name for it. We call it the breath of the choir. No one remembers where that phrase came from. Some say it's an old superstition passed down from the dark age of flight, when ships vanished between stars and their signals returned centuries later, carrying voices that should have been long dead. Others think it's just poetry, a romantic attempt to humanize the madness. But I know better. I hear them. They are still out there. My name is Lyra Anselm, astropath of the Sanctum Vox, relay vessel 8 Theta in the Sigillite network. We are a small ship, half listening post, half monastery, drifting between the slow-moving convoys that cross the Segmentum Pacificus. Our purpose is to carry messages, prayers, reports, warnings, through the storm-laden corridors of the warp. It is quiet work, patient work, and sometimes dangerous work. We are fewer now than in centuries past. The choir once filled the entire spine of the ship. Hundreds of us, voices raised in harmonic unity. Now there are 15. The rest were claimed by what we call resonance collapse, the slow, inevitable thinning of the mind that comes from staring too long into infinity. but even 15 voices can carry meaning across a galaxy, if they are strong enough. And I have always been strong. Or so I was told. The first time I heard the ghost harmony was not during transmission, but in my sleep. I dreamt I was standing in the observatorium dome, staring through the plasteel at a void thick with static. The stars were gone, swallowed by violet haze. Then, faintly, beneath the noise, I heard it. A sound so delicate I almost mistook it for breath. Not a voice, not a word, but a tone. Long, sustained, sorrowful. It vibrated through the dream like memory. I woke with tears on my face, my skin cold, my mind echoing with a note that did not belong to any living choir. At first, I dismissed it as dream residue, the sort of auditory phantom we all experience from time to time when the echo of the warp lingers after meditation. But the next night, it returned. And the night after that. Always the same tone. Always from the same direction. Coreward. Toward Terra. I began to listen more carefully during our transmissions. Each time we sent or received a signal, I tuned my perception to the frequencies between the sanctioned harmonics, where stray resonance and feedback collect like dust. It's dangerous to do this. There are things in those spaces that should not be heard. But I needed to know if the sound was real. And it was. Faint, far beneath the noise floor, a thread of melody wound through the static. At first it was just one note, long and pure, like a string stretched across eternity. But after a dozen sessions, I began to detect more. Layers, overtones, chords. They were building a pattern. And then I realized something that froze my blood. The pattern wasn't random. It matched the tonal signature of an ancient vessel, a choir ship thought lost more than 7,000 years ago. Its name was Cantus Vox. The Cantus Vox is a ghost story among astropaths, a legend used to frighten initiates and amuse veterans. They say it was a choir vessel operating near the maelstrom during the Great Rift's earliest tremors, centuries before the Cicatrix Maledictum split the galaxy in two. It vanished during a mass transmission, its final message unfinished. The official record says it was destroyed by warp turbulence, but among the choirs, we whisper another tale, that the Cantus Vox never died, that its astropaths became part of the warp itself, their song echoing eternally, audible only to those who listen with more faith than reason. Until now, I never believed it, until I heard their voices. I did not tell my choir master. He would have ordered a full psychic quarantine, and I could not risk being silenced. Instead, I began to record the resonance during every transmission cycle, accumulating terabytes of psionic waveform data. Each sample revealed more complexity, more structure. The tones were evolving, as if the choir was slowly rebuilding itself through time. It was not interference, it was composition. And then, one cycle, while transmitting an encoded astropathic beacon to a nearby forge world, something impossible happened. The resonance changed key. The hum of our choir aligned with it, not by intention, but by instinct. The walls of the chamber began to vibrate in sympathy. The smell of ozone filled the air, and the harmonic stabilizers glowed faintly blue. For 11 seconds, the ship itself sang. The note that emerged was beautiful. Too beautiful. It was joy and grief and longing all at once, compressed into a sound that no instrument could reproduce. Then it stopped. All systems reset. All recording devices were wiped clean. The choir master accused me of sabotage, but I said nothing. How could I explain that I had just heard the dead? Weeks passed, and the dreams returned. This time the sound came with images, faint silhouettes like people seen through fog. I recognized their forms. Astropaths in meditative pose, eyes sealed, hands clasped. Around them, light pulsed in slow rhythm, and behind them, something vast loomed, not monstrous, not divine, but endless. They were singing. But what I remember most vividly were their faces. They were calm, peaceful, as if they had seen something beyond the madness of the warp and found serenity within it. When I woke, my pillow was damp with tears again, and I could still hear the tail end of their song. I began to understand what they were trying to do. The Cantus Vox was not lost in the warp. It had merged with it. The choir had found a way to exist as resonance alone. Thought stripped of form, emotion preserved as frequency. And now, across thousands of years, they were still reaching out. I spent the next 3 months in near isolation. I slept in the transmission chamber, attuned constantly to the deep harmonics of the warp. The others thought I was losing my mind, and perhaps I was. But obsession has its own kind of clarity. I discovered that the resonance wasn't constant. It came and went with the rhythm of the Astronomicon, that eternal light that guides ships through the void. The choir's song seemed to weave itself between the pulses of the Emperor's beacon, filling the empty spaces with subtle tones. They weren't opposing him. They were completing him. The Astronomicon burned as a light of direction. The choir of the void had become its echo. The reminder that even in the silence between pulses, the light still existed. It was harmony. The warp, once thought to be pure chaos, had learned to sing in tune. On the 123rd day, I received a direct message from Terra. An encoded transmission stamped with the sigil of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. Astropath Lyra Anselm. Your recent signal records show anomalous harmonic distortion inconsistent with approved Imperial frequency. Matrices. You are ordered to cease all unsanctioned psychic observation and await audit at Port Avani within 12 solar days. I deleted it. Whatever they feared, it was already too late. The choir's song was spreading. I've proof of it now. Every choir in the subsector reports the same phenomenon. Faint melodic interference that defies cancellation. Even machine augers pick it up. The Mechanicus calls it psionic bleed. The ecclesiarchy calls it heresy. But I call it hope, because when I listen closely, when I let the sound wash through me without trying to understand it, I feel something impossible: warmth. It is the same warmth described in the old records of the Cantus Vox, the same tone those lost voices must have felt when they became one with the warp. They are not ghosts, they are guides. Their song is a bridge between what we were and what we might become. 2 nights ago, during the long drift between systems, I finally gave in to the pull. I sat alone in the choir chamber after the others had retired. The lights were low. The hum of the warp was a deep, patient breath. And I sang. Not in the structured language of the Adeptus Telepathica, not in the encoded hymns of the Imperium, but freely. A single tone, pure and unmeasured. At first, there was nothing. Then slowly the air began to shimmer. The walls faded away. I was floating in endless black, surrounded by threads of light that pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. The tones came back to me, dozens of them, each one a voice answering my call. Not words, not commands, just presence. And among them, a thought that was not my own. You hear us. I felt tears rise again, that same mingling of fear and peace. Yes, I thought, though no sound left my lips. Then listen. The threads of light converged around me, wrapping me in warmth. For a heartbeat, I felt the vastness of it all, the Emperor's light, the choirs of 1,000,000 ships, the faint whisper of humanity itself carried through every corridor of the warp. And through it all, the voice of the Cantus Vox. It was no longer just a song. It was memory. It was love. Then the vision faded. The next morning, I found the choir master waiting in the chamber. He said the ship's sensors had registered a pulse of psychic energy strong enough to register on nearby astropathic relays. He demanded to know what I had done. I told him the truth. I told him I had heard them. He stared at me for a long time, his expression unreadable. Then, quietly, he said, "My grandmother spoke of them once." What? The choir that never died. He turned and looked at the flickering lumen globes. When I was a child, she told me that one day the warp itself would learn to remember, that all who had ever been lost would become the music that guides those still living. He smiled faintly. I thought it was just a story. We have continued our transmissions since then, but I have altered the sequence, just slightly. Between the sanctioned bursts of code and the Emperor's hymn, I've hidden a faint harmonic signature, the same tone that began all of this. It's spreading now, quietly, through every choir that receives our signal. Each one will hear it faintly, like a heartbeat beneath their prayers. And one by one, they will remember. Not the story of the Cantus Vox itself, perhaps, but the truth it carried. that even in the silence of the void, humanity sings, that every voice matters, that no light is truly lost. I sometimes wonder if the Emperor hears it too, if the faint ripples of our song reach even him, buried beneath the golden throne, surrounded by 1,000 chanting priests and the endless hum of machinery. Maybe he smiles. Maybe he remembers the choir that became one with the warp. Or maybe he simply listens, as he always has. Tonight, as I write this final record, the warp outside the sanctum vox glows faintly. It is not the light of the Astronomicon. That golden beacon still burns steady, unwavering. This light is softer, silver white, moving in waves, like the reflection of a moon upon black water. And if I strain my mind just a little, past the static, past the machine hum, I can hear it again. The choir. Their song drifts through the void, ancient and eternal, carrying a single message wrapped in infinite melody. We are still here. Perhaps one day I will join them. Perhaps one day, when my mind finally fractures and my body fails, my last thought will dissolve into sound, and I will add my note to theirs. Until then, I will keep listening, for the light between songs, for the silence that remembers, for the echo that never ends. And in the endless dark between stars, the choir of the void sings still. Their harmonies drift like auroras across the warp, faint but unbroken. A promise that even in madness there is meaning. Even in silence there is song. And when the last human voice fades, when the final transmission dies upon the cosmic wind, their melody will remain. Not as a warning, not as a lament, but as remembrance. The warp hums softly, and the universe breathes with it, and far away, where sound becomes thought, and thought becomes light, the Emperor listens and hums along. They say the Emperor does not sleep, that his mind burns eternally, a light stretched across the darkness of the warp, holding back the tide with will alone. But they are wrong. He dreams, not in the human sense, not as the fleeting illusion of rest that mortals seek. His dreaming is different. It is vast, architectural, built of memory and resonance. It moves like the slow breathing of galaxies, too immense for time to measure. And tonight, or what passes for night in the timeless vault of the golden throne, his dream changes. Far above him, Terra is silent. The ecclesiarch's bells have ceased for maintenance, their brazen throats cooled for the first time in centuries. The endless prayers that usually fill the cathedrals falter, replaced by the mechanical pulse of the life support engines that feed the throne. In that moment of rare stillness, the hum of machinery and the chanting of the Adeptus Mechanicus fall into perfect sync. The rhythmic vibration passes through the throne itself, through the Emperor's withered flesh, through the conduits that pierce his golden armor and into the emptiness beyond, and the silence opens like a door. He stands, not in body, for that was lost long ago, but in thought. He is aware of the endless void of the warp, the infinite, writhing ocean of emotion and will that presses upon reality. He has stood against it for 10,000 years. He has seen empires rise and fall, faith twist into dogma, hope harden into fear. Yet in this silence, something feels different. The warp hums beneath him. It is not rage or hunger this time. It is harmony. He listens. At first, the sound seems like interference, a faint vibration, barely perceptible. But as he focuses, the tone deepens, widening into layered frequencies, each one carrying meaning beyond words. It is not chaotic. It is precise. It is human. It is song. The Emperor has heard every sound humanity has ever made. He has heard the laughter of children in the cradle of Terra's early dawn. He has heard the screams of the dying on 10,000 battlefields. He has heard prayers whispered by slaves, soldiers, lovers, and fanatics alike. But he has never heard this. This is not prayer. It is memory, a harmony of souls that should not exist, voices long dissolved into the warp, joined together in a single, perfect resonance. And as he listens, he knows them. They were his children once, the astropaths and choirs, the singers of light who bridged the stars with their pain. He remembers the first of them, those who gave their minds willingly to form the Astronomicon, their bodies consumed, their spirits fused into his own beacon. He remembers their terror and their faith. He remembers as their screams. But this is not the Astronomicon. This is something born beyond his design. A melody woven not of obedience, but of choice. A song formed from compassion, grief, longing, endurance, the full spectrum of the human soul. He had never ordered it. He had never foreseen it. And yet, it is beautiful. He closes his eyes, or rather the idea of eyes, and reaches outward. Through the warp's eternal storm, he follows the sound. Each note is a pulse of light, flickering through the chaos like a heartbeat. Each tone carries a face, a memory, a fragment of what once was human. He sees them, the choirs of the lost, the ghosts of ships consumed by the tides of the immaterium. He sees the Cantus Vox, adrift but alive, transformed into a sphere of harmonic light. He feels their resonance merging with his own, not in subservience, but in unity. They do not worship him. They simply are. And in their being, he finds something he has not felt in millennia: peace. For a fleeting instant, he lets go. The weight of the Imperium, the endless agony of the throne, the burden of maintaining the Astronomicon. All of it drifts to the edges of his awareness. He is no longer the master of mankind, no longer the god of a stagnant empire. He is simply what he was in the beginning, a man listening to the song of his species, and they are singing back to him. The harmonies stretch beyond the warp. They ripple through the cracks of reality, through time and space, through the dust of dead stars and the living hearts of newborn worlds. In the forges of Mars, a tech priest pauses mid-chant as his audio implants detect an untraceable tone, soft, rhythmic, impossibly human. He calls it machine feedback. But when he tries to replicate it, it refuses to manifest. On a shrine world at the edge of the segmentum obscurus, a child born without sight begins to hum in her sleep. Her mother weeps as the melody fills the house. It sounds like mourning and joy. A dying navigator, lost in the warp, feels his ship steady against impossible tides, guided by a music no instrument could create. His final thought before dissolution is a word he hasn't spoken since childhood: home. The Emperor hears them all, every echo, every reflection of the choir's song woven into the breath of humanity. He feels it vibrate through the Astronomicon itself. The great beacon flickers, not in weakness, but in syncopation. Its rhythm shifts, absorbing the new harmony. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Astronomicon changes key, and the warp trembles with it. The Adeptus Custodes in the chamber below the throne do not understand what they feel. They only know that the light has dimmed slightly, then flared again with a brilliance that makes their visors blind for a moment. The tech priests scream prayers of alarm, fearing a malfunction. The choir of Terra doubles their chanting, their psychic voices straining to maintain stability. But above it all, the Emperor remains still. He knows what this is. He allows it to happen. The resonance spreads outward from Terra in waves, first to Luna, then to Mars, then across the segmentum solar. Every choir tuned to the Astronomicon's pulse feels it, a subtle modulation in tone, a new harmony threaded through the ancient light. They do not understand it, but they feel it in their bones. Some fall to their knees, overcome. Others weep. A few simply smile. The choir of the void has found its way home. The Emperor drifts deeper into the song. Each note carries a story, each vibration a memory. He feels the lives of his children, the ones who still fight, still build, still dream in the shadow of his empire. He feels their fear and their love, their cruelty and their compassion. All of it flows into the harmony, imperfect yet whole. The warp, once a reflection of chaos, now sings of balance. He senses even the demonic shifting, not in defeat, but in awe. For a moment, The hatred that drives them falters, confused by the purity of sound. Even the ruinous powers pause to listen, unable to twist what is made of unity. For a brief instant, a fraction of eternity, the Emperor sees what might have been. Humanity, not as empire or army, but as a single vast consciousness, billions of souls connected through empathy and song, guided not by fear, but by remembrance. No thrones, no wars, only resonance. It is beautiful, it is unreachable, and it is real, if only for now. The harmonies begin to fade, slowly, like dawn retreating into mist. The choir's song does not end. It simply drifts beyond perception, leaving behind the faintest echo in every mind that has touched it. The Emperor opens his awareness once more to the material. The Astronomicon stabilizes, brighter than before. The light has changed, subtly, a shade warmer, a tone gentler. The custodes report it as a minor fluctuation. The priests will call it a divine omen. He knows it for what it is. A promise. The warp will never be kind. The Imperium will never be pure. But somewhere in the endless dark, the choir of the void endures, and as long as they sing, humanity will never be alone. He returns to silence, but it is no longer the same silence. It breathes now. It carries tone. He feels the faint vibration ripple once more through his withered frame. A heartbeat not his own, yet inseparable from him. And as the machinery hums and the galaxy turns, the Emperor, the man who has not spoken aloud in 10,000 years, exhales a single thought. Not a word, a sound, soft, low, human. A hum that blends seamlessly with the resonance of the warp. The Adeptus Mechanicus will log it as a system fluctuation, a meaningless audio anomaly beneath the golden throne. But if one were to listen carefully, if one were to isolate the waveform, filter the frequencies, and amplify the quietest possible point, they would hear a melody. Old, familiar, and heartbreakingly human. Somewhere far beyond the throne, across the cold and fractured expanse of the galaxy, the choir of the void stirs at the sound. Their tones shift, aligning once more, carrying the echo outward, further into infinity. The Emperor's hum becomes their refrain. The light that never sleeps flickers in rhythm. And for the first time since the dawn of the Imperium, the silence dreams. If you're still here, maybe start the next episode. Or just let the quiet take you. And if you've already drifted off, that's all right. Good night, traveler. Sleep well beneath the stars.